Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great show for you. Sorry we're running late, but we are, me and my co-host, David Null, Hawkeye Two Feathers. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you as always, and greetings and blessings to all y'all that come and hang out with us. And I want to say thank you and blessings to everyone.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's been a great week. Has been busy for me, so I don't have as much as I normally have because usually I've been doing research on it. But I wanted to continue on with the story of Sitting Bull. And of course, oh shoot, I gotta shut this off. Anyway, and so tonight we're gonna continue on with that story, of course, because hey, that's what counts. Uh, but anyway, remember, people, hit the like button. I'm getting really close to 1,000 subscribers, so hit the subscribe button, pass it on to your friends, and hopefully I will get there by the middle of the year. I only got like 80 more people to go. Ain't that nice? Ain't that something? 1,000 subscribers. Yeah, then I'll be the man. Anyway, let's see. So with Sitting Bull. So I've been reading this book on Sitting Bull, which is not handy. And because I'm last minute getting here. Sorry, everybody. Sorry I was late. Been working a lot. I mean, a lot. So it is what it is.
Normal life just gets hectic sometimes, you know.
Well, that's
And
kind of
when
how
you least expect it to.
yeah, I want to put out good content anyhow, but it doesn't it's not good when I don't feel it's good when I don't put out the greatest content ever, but I like to always be up on things. And I've been reading this book of Sitting Bull, his a biography thing, and it's been really good. Um, last week we talked. Oh, let's see, put this stuff up, and a little slow here. Usually I have all this stuff prepped. Um, let's see. Gotta share. Yeah. Anyway, here we go. Anyway, last week we talked about Sitting Bull, and we talked more about um, the little bighorn. He was there. He was a principal chief, for the Sioux. But the backstory is where did the Sioux come from, and where did Sitting Bull sit in all this? And little do we know that the Sioux were they were actually they came from the north according to their legends, or the west, I should say. They came from the west across the Great Plains, and then they ended up being on the east side of the Mississippi River. Along that time, they settled down. They were more of like a woodland people. Well, most Indians were woodland people, and because they were woodland people, there's Duggar to save the day. The woodland people would, there was buffalo on the east side of the Mississippi, and they lived in like northern Minnesota all the way into Wisconsin area. But as the other tribes, as we've talked about, the Iroquois, and the stuff moved, the Huron and all that were moving west because of the white man coming in to contact with them. They moved west too, and you know how that is. It's a domino effect. And when you move, they move, you move, and eventually they got pushed into western Minnesota, and then they became plains people as they got the horse. and you know how that goes. Um, when you get the horse, well, then you can move about freely. They could move their horses around with and their teepees because they didn't have to drag them. Their teepees got bigger. They could forage for food better. And it's said that being a traveling or nomadic people, nomadic people do much better. They're happier. I don't know why that is, but it seems that nomadic people are a happier bunch of people. And they roamed the plains. They had to share their territory. They moved westward, as says here, into the Sioux hunting. The Sitting Bull helped extend the Sioux hunting grounds westward into what had been territory of the Shoshone, Crow, and Assiniboine, and other Indian tribes. His first skirmish was with the soldiers in 1863 during the U.S. Army's retaliation against the Sante Sioux after the Minnesota Massacre, in which the Teton Sioux had no part. So, this 1863, that was when the Civil War was going on. This, we don't think of it like, that much, but the Civil War, had been raging on there. I mean, the people, white people were fighting white people pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah, and we just take it for granted that, oh, man, I'm trying to
and a lot of people nowadays don't realize that we were fighting the Indians while we were doing the Civil War.
Yes. And what happened is while the Civil War was raging on, the Indians on the plains were actually kind of left alone. There wasn't much going on out there because there wasn't the force of men fighting them. So there was this big lull time. The military was just preoccupied. You know what I'm saying?
They was busy.
Yeah. Let's see. Do I have anything about this? I'm looking to see if I got something about the Sioux Massacre. History of the Sioux Massacres. Yes. Okay. Can you see that? There we go. Get rid of some of this. And look at here. Massacres of 1862 and 63. And so we'll blow this up a little bit. But we're talking about Sitting Bull. These are the times when the white people were starting to, get the hell out of Dodge because of the war, too. And once the war ended in 1865, that's when the push came to really get out there and go find a new land. There was like a big depression going on. Here, state, the writers...
Especially in the South.
Yes, especially in the South. People, we don't think about all that hardship that came along, but there was literally, people were starving to death. Their crops, their houses were burned. They didn't have help. The slaves were freed. They were on their own too. It wasn't like they had it any better off. It wasn't like nowadays, hey, I'm going to sign up for some welfare and go get it. You know what I mean? And then stand in line and get free food.
And a lot of and at the time, a lot of the slaves, we're freed, but now what do we do?
Yeah.
Especially in the South. Now what do we do? Because the master took care of their lodging and took care of their food. So they got mistreated or whatever, but they had food and and shelter. So now they're supposed to be free. Now what do? They have no job, no way to make crops or whatever, because when the Northerners went through Georgia, for example, Sherman burned his way to the ocean, and they just burned crops and houses and somebody had a barn full of some kind of stock, it was gone. If they had hogs and chickens or whatever, the armies sucked them up literally, and killed the chickens and ate the hogs, and so the
Yeah.
Southerners were left with nothing.
Yeah.
When they had to start over, I mean, they had to start over. So the
Yeah.
South was in terrible peril. And there were a lot of Southern men who just didn't have anything to go back to.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
So they
And
and they moved west. That's what my point was.
yeah. Well, and at that time too, I mean, they're out there trying to hunt for food, and everybody had a gun, and you're wiping out the critters. That's just what was happening with the Indians. You can only shoot so many deer, and then there ain't no more deer. They didn't multiply.
Yep. The
So
South needed a lot of time for nature to recover because of the onslaught of the Northerners into the area, and
yeah,
all the men had left and gone to war, and they were spread out in different areas in Tennessee and Mississippi, and
yeah,
but when the Northern troops came down, there was thousands of them, and they needed to be fed.
absolutely. Yeah, there was a big, yeah, you had to feed the troops, just like like I said, the Indians were out there on the plains, and they needed to feed themselves and their families and keep them going. And when the buffalo and stuff ran out, you know, they're at the mercy. Hey, the U.S. government's going to give us food. Well, I guess I'll go onto the reservation. Why not? I mean, I got really no choice. You know what I'm saying? I can do what? I can go on the res.
Let me mention something. The Great White Father.
Yeah.
And we made a treaty, and we have the same issue today. And
Yeah.
that issue is every 4 years, elections come and the people get moved about, right? Or
Yeah.
they're not in position anymore. Somebody new comes in. Somebody's elected into Indian affairs, or they're appointed by the new president, and the old guy's kicked out. So the folks that did make promises, I think they made them with very good intentions. But 4 years later, or the next election, the folks that moved in were like, nah, hell no, no, we don't like no, you guys got to go further west. You
Yeah.
can't be around here. You got to give up your land.
Yeah.
And so the Indians are like, they broke another treaty, and that's true. But every 4 years, whoever was in there, I don't think they had the same sincerity. There were stories of the Indian agents who were, swiping the food and trading it out, and, trading, good beef for rancid beef, and giving the rancid beef to the Indians. And, it was just horrible. And not everybody was honest back then, just
Yes.
like the Northerners were carpetbaggers to the South.
Yep.
Oh, we're going to help you. And all they wanted to do was buy your land for a couple of dollars, and and make you work on your own plantation. So the situation with the reservations was set up to help them, and then it turned into a prison camp.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. And nobody cared if the troops if the government wasn't bringing you food and doing what it's supposed to do, and who are you going to complain to?
Right. Indian
Nobody.
affairs. And every
Yeah.
like I just said, every 4 years somebody gets, there's a new person. So
Yep.
whatever gets started and with good intent is now the next guy comes in and says, forget about it. They're just Indians.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of them were starving and dying and sick, and the tribes were being decimated by sickness and starvation. Well, you think, oh yeah, sickness is a starvation. Well, how'd that come about? Because malnutrition. If you don't get enough food, you die, of a disease, and it has nothing to do with the disease. It's more of you were starving, and therefore, you had, what I'm saying.
Yep. And also remember that they barely had the telegraph out west at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And they barely had train tracks out there to Kansas City and places, but that really wasn't out west. So, they're building the trains to go to California, and they're building, routes like the Chisholm Trail where they're driving cattle and so forth. And so they're making a mark. But as they're doing that, so civilization is moving west.
yep.
But that the word to get a letter or word back to Washington about conditions took
Well,
weeks.
yeah, and
And
then
so, if somebody in Washington, like the Indian representative or whatever, he's like, "Oh God, they're having trouble out there." So they have a meeting, they do some stuff for a couple of weeks, and it takes another couple of weeks for anything to get done or for it to get sent back. So if there's an issue, it'll take a month and a half to 2 months for any word to get back from Washington.
oh yeah, stuff travels slowly. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like so yeah. I know. I totally get what you're saying. We just take it for granted because just like tonight, you couldn't find your thing, and instead of me mailing it and you waiting 2 weeks to get it, I hit the button and in 10 seconds you had it.
Yep.
You know, and our
It took me longer
communication
to
is
find it than you did for you to send it, but yep.
yeah, exactly. Our speed of everything is so fast nowadays.
And
So
you know what? People these days, you know, I gotta wait a month? What?
yeah,
You
they
know,
want
or I gotta
instantaneous.
wait a week, or I
Yeah.
gotta wait an hour, or I gotta wait a minute.
Well,
It's gotten to the point where the frustration level,
well,
imagine having to wait that long though from a message.
well, we've gotten spoiled with companies like Amazon and stuff where you order a product and it's here in 3 days, and you're like, oh well, I can order it today and I'll have it by Friday, or I'll have it, for the weekend. I want this. No matter what you buy, it's there in a couple of days,
Yep.
and any product, the delivery's fast, 3-4 days, and it's there. And if it's any longer than then eventually you start getting pissed. It's like, what? It took 4 days. I'm complaining. I want a refund.
And you can track it. You can where's the truck? you
Yeah,
know when
exactly.
2 years ago a friend was here and he was trying to take a bus up north, and we're sitting in Albany waiting on the bus, waiting on the bus, waiting on the bus, and he gets on his little, I didn't have a smartphone at the time. He gets on his, and come to find out the bus is broke down just outside of Moultrie. Something had happened, and there was a GPS of where the bus was and how long
Mhm.
it was going to take for the next bus to get to him. And I was I was like, what? You can watch where the buses are? Anyway, so nowadays people just don't know how, what it was in the olden days.
Oh yeah, yeah. The olden days weren't really that long ago. Well, let's get back to our story here. We're going to talk about this a little bit. This is about the Sioux. Now, remember, Sitting Bull was born in around 1830. So, he was in this part. He was in the northern Humpapa, group of Indians from the north, would have been from Minnesota area. Because remember when he was instead of getting captured, he went to Canada. Of course, he was starving there too. The state of Minnesota, 12 years commencing at a time anterior of the removal of the Sioux from their ancient possessions to their reservations upon the Minnesota River. He was a member of General Sibring's expedition against the savages. You notice how they call them savages in 1862. But these people were far from savages. They had a complex society. They were good people. And the white man had labeled them as savages because all they got was the propaganda of them scalping everybody and burning houses and killing everything in their path, you know. Well, of course you're going to be pissed, but they weren't like that. They were just normal people out there saying, hey, you're crossing my land. I can hear Hawkeye quite well. He's quite loud, but you're like something down at the end of a long tunnel. Ah, again with the sound. Crap. Sorry. Audio. I'll change it. It's coming across on mine real good, but yours.
And it's coming across here real good.
Yeah, but okay, that should fix things. Anyway, at work. Oh, Chloe's at work. She's listening. Thank you, Susie Q, for letting me know. I hope that fixes the problem. Is that better? Anyway, the Sioux from their ancient positions. Okay, so they lived in these they were woodland Indians, and when the horse arrived in the 1700s, and you think, oh, they had horses for thousands of years. The horse only got there around 1700 or so. So they were horseless. But once they got the horse, they moved. But not all of them moved. Like I said, here they are, still in Minnesota. And if you've ever been to Minnesota, it's still kind of plainsy. It's not all. The whole Minnesota is not just all woods and trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is big open fields, little woods here, little woods there. Okay, from its arrival at the St. Peter's in August until its return in November, it acted as the recorder of the military commission, which tried some 400 of the participants in the outbreak. During that time and since, he devoted particular attention to obtaining from Indians half-breeds, traders, white captives, fugitives from massacres, and other particulars of the various outrages and the cause of the massacre. Can you imagine that? Oh, there was a massacre. White people got killed, but they never say, oh, the Indians got killed. No, it's just always the white people.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, that's why the Indians were savages, as we've talked about. But they never called the white men savages for what they
No,
did.
no, God, no.
And it was at least equal.
Yeah. And so from this information thus derived the endeavor to form a connected and reliable history. Yeah, reliable. Okay. He regrets that the haste required to place it before the public while attention is directed to the subject is mitigated against the symmetry of arrangement and finish of the composition which should accompany a work. It was this desire the portraits of Colonel Crooks, Colonel Miller, and Major Brown, Major Forbes, and Reserve Sergeant R. Riggs, and others noted that men connected with war accompanied by personal notices should have a place in this volume, but the publishers were not willing to incur additional expenses. So only this guy got his picture in. So
incur additional expense, huh?
Yeah, so only this guy got his picture in it. And it's this one right here. I'm sorry. This is General Sibley. That's the guy. How about that? They got that much.
I'm sorry, when was that published?
1865.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, like I said, I love these old books because when you're talking about things like this, it's, I mean, the massacres were in 1862 or 63, and they're writing this book, at that point in time. Let's see. I love to hear about Indian chiefs that we never heard about before, things like that. The Upper Minnesota Indians massacre, bloody, which stands as a prominent in bloody drama, which attends the advance of the white races across the continent, and atrocities by which it was attended, the attempt of the actors to enlist other savage tribes on their behalf. Well, no, they should have joined together to make them stronger, but they didn't. They were, Indian tribes fought Indian tribes. and they fought other Indian tribes. And they're even in their own tribe, their like tribe, they would fight each other, you know. And what are they fighting over? They're fighting over hunting ground for food. You know what I'm saying? This is my ground, and I'm going to hunt it, kind of thing. Um, the mysterious part enacted by a Negro. You know, it's how they call them Negroes then. Godfrey, who received from the Indians the name of o- Otokle, Otekle, Otekla, or Tekle, something like that. Or he who kills many. The course of their great orator and chief Little Crow, who was not second to Philip or Pontiac or Tecumseh, the perilous conditions of the captive whites, their shameful treatment, and the particular manner in which their deliverance was accomplished. The trial over 400 of the accused and the simultaneously, get this part, simultaneous execution of 38 of their number are full of thrilling interest. So the Indians are trying to protect their land. There was a massacre, of course. It's like Sitting Bull had said. He said, a dog is very playful and he's friendly, but if you back him up against the wall, once his tail hits the wall, then he becomes mean. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that was words of Sitting Bull. Those engaged in the massacre were, with but few exceptions, members of the Nidawakitan, Wapena, Wapukuna, or the Wapatan, and Sisseton tribes of the Great Sioux, or Dakota Nation. They formerly occupied the northeastern portion of Iowa, part of the western border of Wisconsin, the southwestern half of the state of Minnesota, and adjoining possessions in Dakota, a vast, fertile, and beautiful land with great undulating plains over which herds of buffalo roamed, with groves and woodlands in which the deer found a hiding place, with countless lakes. Oh, doesn't that sound beautiful? And streams, mighty rivers filled with choiceless fish and swarming with myriads of wild fowl, the duck, the goose, and the swan, and the brant. I don't know what a brant is. And their shores alive with the otter, the mink, and the beaver. Their existence, customs, and manners of life have long been familiar to the whites. 100 years before the American Revolution, the adventurous Hennepin, the first man who gave to the world a drawing of the contract of Niagara, visited
Yeah.
them.
Madara.
Yeah. And then on his return, published a narrative of his adventures. Carver, Nicollet, Long Schoolcraft, Cass Fremont, Marriott, and others travelers of repute followed afterwards. Catlin, yeah, we all know of George Catlin. He drew all those pictures. The great Indian painter had preserved the faces of their prominent chiefs on his immortal canvases, and the Schiller and Longfellow have snug of them in their melodious verse. Okay.
Melodious.
Melodious. Okay, melodious. But I do have the Caitlin pictures here, George Caitlin, somewhere. And if I can click on it real quick, I know
By
I
the way,
have it.
Longfellow was a poet and a writer.
Yes, yes, he was.
So, and he wrote about things, and the Civil War really changed him. I read a biography thing on him years ago, and seeing people with their legs blowed off and arms missing, and the true, he considered the true horrors of war, and he wrote about it, in prose and different things. So, but anyway, that's who Longfellow was. And I would suggest, if you've never read Longfellow, it's not a bad read, and you should flip through and read some of his stuff.
Yeah, I got a Longfellow book somewhere. And here's some of Caitlin's pictures. of chiefs that, lived. Here's White Cloud, chief of the Iowas. Can you imagine meeting up with these guys? Wow, even if these pictures are half-ass good, it's still amazing capture of what these people actually looked like back in the day. You
Yeah,
know?
but just as a reference, um, they posed for these, so they didn't look like that every day. Just
No.
saying.
Yeah.
But when they had to go somewhere or be somewhere, then that's when they dressed up and put on their paint.
Okay, so this is a good iconic picture. So I was reading a story about, because we're still talking about Sitting Bull. Now, Sitting Bull had to go to Washington, or he was going to a big meeting to see the Great Father, right? And him and, several other chiefs headed east. On their way east, they came to a place, I forget where it was, but they're basically in their skivvies and their thong, like they would, wear out on the plains. They pretty much most of the time they were half naked, right?
Mostly naked.
Yes. And when they got to a soldier's camp or whatever it was, some area, they're going along. His other chief guys somehow managed to find clothes, and they wanted to wear the white man's clothes to go meet the Great Father. And Sitting Bull, he kind of missed out on that. He didn't go and find some throwed out clothes from the army guys, right? He just slept through that or whatever it was, and his buddies come back and they're all dressed up and in you know white man's clothes. Well, Sitting Bull said, "I refuse to go meet the Great Father in in my clothes, whatever he had. I want clothes too, or I'm not going." And this is not Sitting Bull. Trust me, this is not Sitting Bull picture. But of course, we don't have a picture of it. But the people felt sorry for him, so they rummaged through things, and they found him a white shirt, and they found him some pants that were too short. But so you got to use your imagination with this. The pants were too short, but it was the only waist that would fit him because it was a small guy, because he probably was pretty thin. And so they got him some white socks, and somebody sewed the white socks to the pants. So it looked like it was one piece because, the white socks had just come down. They didn't have elastic back in the day. So
So
some lady,
they were like pajamas.
yeah, so exactly. So he had the white socks sewed to the short pants, and then he had this white shirt, and then they gave him a coat, but the coat was too small. So they ripped it. Some lady was a seamstress lady, and they ripped it down the middle, and they sewed a red blanket in the back of it to make up so the shoulders were wider because that's the only material they had. You got to remember, material is a hard commodity back in the days. You're probably talking, 1850s or something when he was doing all of this, or maybe the 60s. You know what I'm saying? So he thought these clothes were the grandest thing, and they gave him a polished stovetop hat, and so now he's got this, you know, hat on like this guy here in this picture, stovetop hat, and which was popular back in the day. And he's got, a coat that's ripped down the back, sewed with a red blanket in the backside, pants that are too short, a white shirt on, and leggings that probably came up close to his knees, or leg, and with socks going up. And that was his dress. And he thought that was the world, according to the book. But the white people that were looking at him thought it was ridiculous. And most people didn't laugh, but they just took it and, smiled and, and did not, they were polite. But one little girl, I forget what her name was, but she pointed out, the emperor has no clothes, kind of thing, and
Yep.
said, she started laughing and her father had to take her away. But, the Indian, he's dressed like this. He sees white man's clothes. Any white man's clothes is going to be unbelievably cool to him. You know what I'm saying? Just like this guy putting on the hat and all this stuff. He's thinking he's cool, but he's probably really out of place. People didn't dress like this all the time, but he's dressing like this. We think this is cool, and he thinks that's cool. So, they're the same people. They think like us. Hey, I want to be in style. No matter what it looks like, I'm going to wear that Nike shirt. I'm going to wear that thing on top of my head because that's the in style doohickey, right? They're just normal people. But yeah, here's some more Caitlin pictures. See, like here, you see the guy all dressed up, but what is everybody else? Everybody else is half naked. Barely got any clothes on at all.
Yeah, there were some back when the Indian Wars first really started, I guess, right after the Civil War, when there was a lot of cavalry and bluecoats that moved out west, and so when they killed him, the Indians, it was sort of like counting coup. If they could get, one of those guys' hats um, or a scarf or something, and they like the colors.
Yes.
So there were many of them that, you know, stole the blue coats because it was like, see what I did,
Yeah. Well, you can see in these pictures, I mean, this is what they got, buffalo robes, moccasins, things like that. And the white man's just, they're wearing, regular clothes. I guess it's one of the, I want what he has kind of thing.
You know what though? The one thing that they didn't get that I noticed, they weren't about getting their boots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Indians, you didn't, they like, nah, I'd rather go barefoot or wear my moccasins. So
Well,
they
and
weren't
see,
in, they didn't steal their boots.
and I agree with that because that, it's hard if you're, I've seen even with people nowadays, people who wear flip-flops all the time or don't wear shoes much, you know what I'm saying? And then you
Yep.
tell them to put a boot on, they just think it's the horriblest thing to their foot. You know,
Yeah.
and I can imagine because you're carrying this heavy thing, your foot's all sweaty inside, it's not fun, you
Well,
know.
since I've been retired, I'm in a pair of socks now, and I wander around sometimes in the yard with my socks on, and I do wear uh, um, these little booties that are open, and when I have to go to town and I got to put on real shoes, they're very uncomfortable. But when I worked for a living, I'd stay in my work shoes, for 12 hours a day. Didn't bother me. Now to put them on for an hour is like uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
so I can attest to that. Why would I
Yep.
put these boots on?
Exactly. That's exactly it. But yeah, yeah. I mean, even in these pictures, they just wear, well, those moccasins were just enough to cover their feet, so that they didn't, get a sand burr in there, just enough to cover your feet, just a little bit of protection. That's it. It
Pick
wasn't
up a
like,
bad rock.
yeah, exactly. Just enough to, whatever. But
Cushion it.
anyway, cushion it, exactly. So let's get back to this. Anyway, as early as the 1700s, the Dakotas visited Montreal and the Wabash. Their head chief was received at Mackinac, where with great honors than the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, and the Ojibways, who were also present. The British officer in command wrote a song in honor of his coming, of which the following is the last refrain. Hail to the great Wabash! Soldiers, your triggers draw. Guards, wave the colors and give him the drum. Choctaw and Chickasaw, whoop for great Wabash. Raise the porcupills, the king's friend is come. Quickly following the earliest traveler came. And I wish I could tilt that, but I can't. Sorry. So, anyway, there you go. Hal pulling a travois. See, and then the traders came to exchange commodities of civilization for furs, and intoxicated with the wild and romantic life, and supplied by their principals at home with luxuries, intermarried with the natives, and established themselves permanently in the country. And that's the way the travelers came too. They came, and the Indians were, people forget, the Indians were friendly people at some point in time because they weren't threatened. Their life was not threatened by these people. It was their like, hey, look at somebody new. Look, they're here to bring us commodities, things that we don't have, and like some clothing, um, some pots and pans, maybe a gun, and all I got to do is go out and shoot some beaver and some deer hides and things like that, and they give me things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, if anybody ever, I have worked with some folks over the years around here, trapping, and they trap all kinds of things like foxes that get into hen houses and stuff. And one thing is that a fox will go out of his way to step in an ant bed for some reason. So they
Yeah.
always set the traps up near an ant bed. And sure enough, a fox will go by and they catch them. So, but um, trapping is not easy,
Yeah.
especially in the wintertime and in the snow and all that. I'm sure folks have seen the movies where the trappers go out, but so whatever they got for their furs, they earned.
Oh yes. Yes.
They really, they weren't lazy savages. They had to go out and do the trapping and walk the trap lines and all that. And they had to, it's hard to skin them, and then to treat the skins, and, to make sure that they were right. That was hard work.
You forget the most important part. You know what that is?
What?
The furs for most animals are best in the winter. The winter fur is what you're wanting to get. And
Because of the thickness.
yes, the thickness, the pretty colors, stuff like that. And that means you're out there not just in the summer when it's nice. You're out there in the winter when there's 2 to 10 feet of snow in the cold water trying to catch a beaver. You're in outside hunting at 40 below zero, tramping through 2 foot of snow trying to get a deer or a pelt of some sort. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, or a fox, because some of the foxes up north, they change colors. And so
Yes.
they're more gray and white in the wintertime. So that would be more preferable than, that gives a choice um, between the summer with the red and then the winter with the white and gray. So absolutely.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Um, so you're out there hunting in the winter when it's the worst time of the year to be outside. And that's what I'm saying is you're doing this in the worst possible conditions. It's a lot of work. You're saying. And, I mean, if it was in the summertime, it'd be like, oh, it's a breeze. I go down to the creek. It's hot. I jump in and go set my traps. It cools me off. I go look for a deer. I shoot one. I drag it home. It's all fun and games. No. not so good.
No.
You know,
And another thing too, to set up those, their trap lines were miles long. You know,
yes.
you can't just set a bunch of traps in a couple of acres. No, you got to spread them out, and
Yep.
and especially if you've trapped in one area for a while, you're going to have to move, and you end up moving. Guess what? Further away.
Yeah.
you know. So every
Yeah.
time you go to set your traps, you got a long way to trudge through the snow. If it's raining, whatever it is. So inclement weather was almost daily.
Yep, yep, exactly. So here we go back to the thing. It says, so too, when the War of 1812 broke out, these tribes, although they had made a treaty of peace, here we go with the United States again, and their broken promises, a treaty of peace with the United States, and ceded a tract of land at the mouth of the Minnesota for the establishment of a military post, were easily induced by the traders, who were English subjects, to act as the allies of their government, and they composed a portion of the forces which compelled the surrender of the post to at Mackinac and besieged the Fort Magus. Sometime after peace was declared, our own traders gained a foothold, and in 1825 a convention was entered into at Prairie du Chien. That was just a little ways from my place. Between the tribes, I've been to Prairie du Chien, between the tribes and the United States, by which it was agreed that every act of hostility committed by either of the contracting parties against the other should be mutually forgotten and forgiven, and the perpetual peace and amity should thereafter exist between them. And in 1830 and 1836, they seceded part of their lands in Iowa, and in 1837, all the portion lying east of the Mississippi River. And there you go. They basically kicked them out of the freaking east side of the country. And
And
like
also during that time was the Trail of Tears. So
yeah,
they were kicking, Andrew Jackson became president. And even though the Indians helped him during the War of 1812 and the Battle of New Orleans, 1814, we took a little trip.
yep,
But but then by when he became president, they kicked all the Indians out down here in the South and in Alabama. I mean, they just and send them all to Oklahoma. Guess what? On the other side of the Mississippi.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So here, Minnesota was organized in 1849 territory, because Wisconsin became a state in 1848, and the immigration rapidly settling upon the eastern shores of the Mississippi soon began to require and encroach upon the more fertile country opposite. And that's the whole thing is there's that's very fertile country. Iowa, Minnesota, that's where all the corn's grown. So in 1851, the Indians, and again, they're getting pushed back. In 1851, the Indians were induced to sign treaties by which they transferred to the United States over 30 millions of acres, embracing all their lands in Iowa, Dakota, and Minnesota, except for tract along the upper Minnesota, which they reserved for their future occupancy and home. This commenced just below Fort Ridgely and extended 150 miles to Lake Traverse, with a width of 10 miles on each side of the river. Can you imagine? You're giving up millions and 30 million acres, and then you get to settle on a 150-mile tract of land that's 10 miles wide.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Well, actually, it's 10 miles on either side of the river.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's 20 miles wide, but
Yeah.
still, at least
Yeah.
they had a river.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. The Senate in 1852 approved the treaty, provided that the Indians would agree to an amendment by which the reservation should also be seceded, and they be located in such land as the president should select. And into this the Indians assented. The president never having made the selection contemplated, and the Indians having moved upon the reservation made in the first treaties, the government recognized their right to its possession. And in 1858, by treaties which were approved in 1860, purchased from them all that portion of the tract on the north side of the river. So now that 10 miles, 150 is gone.
Yep.
They continued to reside on the remainder until the outbreak. The, the Midwakans and the Hookdas occupied in common all below the Yellow Medicine River, which was called the Lower Reservation, and the other two tribes, the part above the river, which was styled the Upper Reservation. Pursuant to the various treaties, large amounts of look at they're starting to dress like white men now. Here we go. Money and goods were annually delivered to them, and labor performed for their benefit. For the superintendence of these matters, an agent resided among them, and two places for transaction of business were established, one 14 miles above Fort Ridgely on the Minnesota River and known as the Lower or Redwood Agency, and the other at the mouth of the Yellow Medicine and designated as the Upper or Yellow Medicine Agency. And the inhabitants of the Indians were of very comfortable character. Some lived in low circular houses made by themselves from wood and covered with bark. Others in brick houses, a story and a half high, constructed by the government. Ooh, look at they had low income housing way back then.
Yeah.
Either
I
you
was
can,
trying not to say it, but you did.
yeah, it's like, oh, look, back in the 1850s and 60s, they were low income housing already.
Indian
And
slums.
yeah, and they were getting food, money, and the government was building them houses. And you got to choose between living in your own dugout house made from wood and covered with bark, or you can live in a brick house, or you can live in your teepees of canvas resembling the Sibley tent now in use in our army, which was modeled after their teepees by the rebel General Sibley when stationed in Minnesota. The different bands under their hereditary chief occupied separate villages, with the exception of some 100 families who had been introduced by divers considerations to become white men who lived together without distinction of bands. See, they were kind of integrating them already. They had their hair cut short, wore coats, platoons, balloons, attended church and schools, cultivated the soil, and elected their president or chief after the manner of the republic, where married by a clergyman and buried their dead in the ground. Remember, they did not bury their dead in the ground before. The other remained Indians, left their hair unshorn, wore the breechcloth, blanket, and leggings, married as many wives as they pleased after their own fashion, placed their dead on scaffoldings in the open air, and made themselves brave with paint and with the feathers of an eagle, then went upon the warpath against the Chippeways and tortured, killed, and scalped, murdered, mutilated men, women, and children. In addition to the Indian population were many half-breeds or mixed bloods, and a large number of whites consisting of traders, employees of the government, and others. Around the agencies were churches and schools and warehouses and stores and residences and shops forming thriving villages. A few miles above the Yellow Medicine were the churches and schools of the Reverend Briggs and Dr. Williamson, long missionaries among the Sioux. At Parle, there was a dwelling house and a school of another missionary, the Reverend Mr. Huggins, and a storehouse and blacksmith shop belonging to the government. All belonging, it's all belonging to the government. See, That's the thing. It's a big corporation. The big
Now
Stone
think
Lake.
about, here you are, a Native American who has grown up believing and having Mother Earth belonging to no one and open to everyone. Okay.
Yep.
And their ancestors and they have been able to roam wherever they wanted to. And
Yep.
now you got to live on the res. So
Yep.
imagine, if you can, how that made them feel.
Yeah.
Do you think they were happy about it? I mean, here's the white man and change all these changes, and we have to leave our culture behind. I mean, think about it. If it was somebody trying to make you do it, how would you feel? Anyway, sorry.
No, that's all right. No, that's exactly it. And change your whole way of life. You were a kind of nomadic people chasing and hunting buffalo, and then all of a sudden, here you are. They're telling you, here's this little strip of land, and this is what you're gonna do, and we're gonna put you in a house.
Here's a brick
That
house, instead of, because being in a teepee, you're right on the ground.
Yeah.
You're always connected to Mother Earth. If you're living in a brick house, you're not.
No, no, you're not. Exactly. The reservation was fertile and well adapted to farming purposes. Oh, I bet you the white man wants that reservation. There
How
was an
how come they
excellent,
gave it to him?
yeah,
It must not have been too good.
they were just whittling it down little by little. There was an excellent road through it, upon which had recently been placed over the sloughs and streams 18 well constructed bridges, two of them 50 and one 67 feet in length. About 3,000 acres had been plowed, fenced, and planted, in which, as was afterwards estimated, hear that words, would have yielded, had the Indians remained and made a proper harvesting, over 100,000 bushels of corn and potatoes and turnips, besides 500 bushels of wheat, and a large quantity of beans, pumpkins, and peas, and other vegetables. At both agencies were sawmills and corn mills, and at the upper agency a brickyard where was manufactured a fine article similar to that made from the Milwaukee clay. Also at both agencies were blacksmith and carpenter shops where wagons, sleds, and farming utensils were made and other ordinary work done. And there they are. They civilized them, put them in houses, made them look like white people, cut their hair short, took away their
And
stuff, and
turned them into slaves, basically.
yeah,
Because
and
the
then
white man, there wasn't enough white people to work that much territory. So, ooh, come over here, Indians, and work the land with us, and then we're going to take your corn and peas and leave you with nothing.
yeah,
Shame on
so
them.
exactly. It says here the Indians had plows, hoes, scythes, cradles, oxen, gear, harnesses, carts, wagons, and usual farming implements, and oxen, cows, calves, and sheep, and horses. Large quantities of hay had been cut and particularly cured, and materials for the erection of some 70 or 80 new buildings prepared. The farmer Indians had coats, pants, shirts, coffee, tea, salt, sugar, candles, soap, vinegar, molasses, rice, and lard, and tubs, buckets, churns, hardware, and queensware, and other household articles. You know what? It sounds like they turned them into us. New
Yep.
blacksmith shops were being put in operation at different points at the lower agencies. Bed of clay suitable for the manufacture of brick, similar to the ones of Yellow Medicine, had been discovered and work commenced upon it for that purpose. And then it just goes on. Um, the conversation which he had with Little Crow, their head chief, 3 days before the fatal 18th of August, furnished no indication of what was about to transpire. Being aware of the Crow's influence among the blanket Indians, Mr. Brath had previously promised to build him a good house if he would aid in bringing around the idle young men to habits of industry and civilization, and would abandon the leadership of the blanket Indians. Crow ascended to this, and the carpenter work had all been ordered and nearly completed in the conversation before alluded to. Little Crow selected a location for it and seemed to be well pleased with its position. He had shortly before been defeated for the speakership of the lower Indians, but he cared nothing about this. If elected, the other Indians would just be jealous of him. He stated he had a store of yoke of oxen, of wagons, and plenty of corn and potatoes, and was now living more comfortably than ever before. He said he'd just been grinding his scythe to cut hay, and that 2 or 3 of his young relatives were coming to help him, and they would soon cure enough for the winter. There was a young Indian of his band present who Crow said would make a good gun could make a good gun stock, and he showed a well finished stock which he had made and requested that he should have sent it to him a set of tools with which to work. Crow had spoken out of this before Galbert told him he had sent for a complete set and they would soon arrive. These, he said, were all the requests he had have to make, and he believed they would be complied with. And so far removed from the agent's thoughts was the terrible tragedy which afterward ensued, that the day before its occurrence, leaving his family at Yellow Medicine among the Indians, he started for Fort Snelling with some 45 men whom he had recruited on the reservation, consisting of half-breeds. I love how they say just half-breeds, employees of the government, and went as far as St. Peter's. Over the soil which the Indians had sold, civilization had made rapid strides. So see, the Indians sell it, and then the people from Ireland, Germany, and Norway, and Sweden had made another country of the old world from every part of the new world. And had come a quarter million people came there to live in their land. Made of the land of their home. Through the once quiet waters of the Lake Pepin, past the tall cliffs which Winona had taken her death leap, countless steamboats puffed their way. Yeah, and within earshot of the cave where Carver heard the Dakotas moaning and weeping for their departed, the locomotive uttered its harsh scream. At St. Anthony Falls, over which the canoe of Scarlet Dove dashed when she sung her last song, and to which the trembling Indian brought belts of porcelain, pipes, and rings, tributes to be hung in the air to the friend presiding there. Prosperous villages had sprung up, and its mad waters whirled industries, vast machinery, in obedience to the voice of man. Far and wide where the buffalo roamed, herds of cattle and quiet sheep flocked and grazed, and the plowman turned the globe. The scaffolding on which the Indians placed their dead passed away, and the cemetery, with its cross and whitened marbles, took its place. Almost within stone's throw of the reservation was the prosperous town of New Ulm, and the emigrants even crowded upon the land vacated by the Treaty of 1858. Everywhere appeared those works by which the great Caucasian mind asserts itself supreme. Nor did the whites fear the Indians. It is true that the Inkpatude Puda, I guess that is, and 8 of his band in 1858 had killed some 40 persons, but they were outlaws from their tribe, and their acts were discountenanced by their nation, and one of them fell by the hand of another native Dakota. The weird religion of the savage, his mad dances, his antique traditions, his strange attire, attracted attention and interest, which were increased by the certainty of his not very distinct extinction. And see, they already knew in 1865 that his very distant extinction, and the fact that he would never be forgotten, while river and lake and hill and state and country and city and town should owe to his language their beautiful, harmonious names. Yeah, see, the white man comes in, names all their stuff after the Indian, and then hunts, kills them off, and then takes their land and go, woo-wee, we named our town. Look at here, the Battle of which Chippeways, because there's a city, Chippewa County, in which a view of the town of Shakopee, and that's a Indian name, danced his scalp dance and swung the reeking trophy of his victim within sound of the streaming printing press of St. Paul. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to end it right there, and we'll pick up next week because this leads into, why, a Sitting Bull was as famous as he was, you know. Okay, there we go. Back to normal. But it just tells you why they were fed up. Why were the Indians angry is because here we are, we're working our asses off. We sold all our land. We're living in men's houses, white man's houses. We got all this stuff, but you know what? We're not happy. We just can't be happy. And then we look across the river and there's 250,000 people over there. We just sold our land to. I used to hunt over there, and now you've destroyed it. Our cemetery over there, we used to put our dead people, you plowed it under, and now it's a field. And where we, used to hunt buffalo is now crops and cattle are grazing on it. It's all fenced off. I would be mad too just looking at it. Even if I had a place to live, I'd be like, oh man, you took my childhood home, the lands and forests and trees that I used to roam in, and it was peace and quiet. Now you got a train going by going toot toot.
And not only that, they looked across the river and said that was the land of my father and his father and his father's father. All of my grandfathers, hunted and lived on that land. And now I can't even go over there and visit where the ancestors, used to be, where they lived.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so, it was personal to them in the present situation, but it was also spiritually really tough on them because of their ancestors in the land. And so
Yeah.
so for them it was a double whammy, in
Yeah.
that, excuse me, in that respect.
Exactly. It sure was. I mean, what a devastating blow. I mean,
Really,
I,
you
I,
know
I, yeah, I'm,
and we call them savages, just. And the thing about the white man, they never do get enough. And big business was always the push.
yeah,
So, there were rich men who went out west and established towns and then brought the railroad through that town.
yeah,
So, they and sometimes they went out west and bought a town or made a town and the railroad moved. But the folks who planned it, and just like today, the big shakers and movers who go to Davos and all these other places, and they plan the moves of what's going to go on for this year. They
yeah,
did the same thing back then. Well, we're planning on moving this train through here. We got to lay so many miles of track, and we got to do this. We're going to need X many laborers. And it was all about business,
yep,
and how much land can we take on the way? And can we shoot a few Indians and get rid of that? We don't want to have them Indians, messing with their trains and, all of that. The big business guys sat up in their chairs and decided what was going to go on.
yeah. That's exactly it. I mean, and then when they could have their huge, first they got this, and then they're like, well, we need some land. We're going to take 30 million acres. Oh, there ain't many Indians. We can put them on this tract of land. Well, you know what? That tract part of there, we'll buy that from them. We'll make another treaty with them and kick them off. There's only 500 of them. We'll put them on that side of the river, and then we'll take this other side, because, well, we'll give them a good excuse why that side isn't so good, and they'll be
And
like,
what did,
oh,
yeah, and what did they actually pay them?
well,
Because
yeah,
before they paid them in beads and stuff. What
yeah.
did they actually give them $100,000, or what they do? Just give them a bunch of shovels?
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I'm sure the Indian of the day did not understand money. I mean, like what will that buy? I mean, I'm sure he was a stupid, but he didn't understand the concept of like, well, this land is worth X amount because I had it appraised.
Didn't understand the value.
The
They
value,
understood
yes.
money, bought stuff, but they didn't understand the value.
Yeah,
They knew that, if you wanted to buy that shirt, it cost 10 coins.
yep,
Okay. But they didn't know what the value of that was.
yeah.
That if they
Well,
went somewhere else, they could buy two shirts for the same amount of coins. They didn't
well,
understand the value.
Well, that and like in my Rocky Mountain story you can find on Robert V. Adventures, they were talking about how they would bring alcohol out to the Indians, and they would sell them, this little bit of alcohol, like a glass full, and they would water half of it down because the Indians would get drunk really fast. So if you gave them pure liquor, it didn't take much. So they would water it down, and then they could sell them more, and then they would drink, and they would charge them, you know, huge prices for a glass of liquor, or whatever. They sold it by the cup or the pint or whatever it was, but for that little bit, they charged an outrageous amount of money. And something like, I remember level one said like $4 or something like that. Well, today it doesn't sound like a lot, but back then $4 was like a month's pay, kind of thing, you
Yep.
know. And they were trading for this, like yeah, I drank that. Give me another. Well, you know, it's watered down. Can't you tell? Nope. Liquor gets me. you know, and they would drink themselves to death too.
Yep.
And of course, when their money ran out, in this story I've been reading, the Rocky Mountain story, the the one, the daughter of the chief, she drank herself to death. She drank so much she died. They couldn't even revive her, and which probably wasn't all that much. And then like the one chief, he wanted liquor so bad, he brought one of his beautiful daughters in and tried to trade her for a keg of liquor. Yeah, I'm thinking, holy cow, are you addicted or what?
And also, a lot of people don't know much about how to distill liquor. And so back in the day, they found out that you needed to do everything with copper, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but there were folks who were distilling alcohol that weren't using the best of equipment, they couldn't get copper out there. So, there was some bartender, and one, there were some Chinese folks who were making sake. Sake takes a while, so they'd have drums of this stuff, cooking off, and the white man, he'd have his little still in the back, and real nice and quiet, didn't want to tell anybody. So, but because it took a lot and cost a lot to ship it out west. So, they had little distilleries. So, but they would put these things together that were lead lined and stuff like that. So, what would, they drank themselves to death, probably because the liquor was poison. Not
Yeah.
only was it alcohol and they got alcohol poisoning, but if they distilled it off right, you got about 120 proof. And if they watered it down to half, you still got a decent amount of alcohol
Well,
content,
you gotta remember the Indians didn't take much alcohol
right.
to.
And there's that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm curious, there aren't any statistics, but knowing what I've, read about alcohol distilleries and stuff, how it moved west, because a lot of the, Irish and folks that came over, they wanted their whiskey. And they lived in the Appalachians, and there's a lot of stills in the Appalachians. And then when them folks moved west, they took their stills with them. They took their alcohol with them. They didn't leave it behind. Oh, hell no. Somebody was making it and be out behind the barn. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
But to wrap that up, to finish that thought. So, but when they took stuff with them, they didn't necessarily have the bestest of equipment. And so sometimes the equipment would make people sick.
Yeah.
I mean, the use of the equipment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, what do you got for us tonight?
Well, I went through the book after I finally got the book. I do not know what happened because I had this book on my computer, and the computer rebooted itself, and the program did, and this story that I've been reading out of for all these several months now is gone off my computer, off the disk that Robert sent me. Not a clue where it went. So, but anyway, this is the Seneca book we've been reading about. And tonight, the first story is Dogs Save Their Masters. Now, I say that's the first story because it's only 3 pages. And I forgot what the next one is. But crumb. Let me see if I can scan down real quick. And what's the next story? The Deserted Village is the next story, and it's only about 3 or 4 pages long. So we can stop after the first one, or we can go ahead and read the second one.
Well, it's up to you.
I'm good, but I mean, I just, we'll see how the time goes.
Yeah, remember we didn't start till 10:15 or 9:15. Sorry.
Yep. Well, 10:15 here, but yep. All right, let me get a drink and cough up a loogie.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's the way it goes.
Okay.
It's all yours.
This story, Seneca Traditions and Legends. Dogs save their masters. Their master. There was a Seneca who was very fond of hunting. He had 2 dogs that were so strong that they could kill a bear. One winter, this man started off to hunt. After traveling 2 days, he camped and began to look for game. He hunted many days and killed a great many animals. One night, just as he was going to sleep, the dogs began to bark furiously. Not far from the camp was a large elm tree with the top broken off. The man had thought the tree was hollow, but he had never examined it. One of the dogs now ran in the direction of this tree. The other followed, and by the sound of the barking, the man knew that some creature was in the tree. After a time, one of the dogs came back and said, "My brother, maybe we are going to die tonight. On the tree, there is such a creature as we have never seen before. I will watch it, but mark me with a coal from the end of my mouth to my ear on each side." The man did as the dog asked. Then the dog said, "Now I will go to the tree, and my brother can come and be marked." He ran off, and soon the other dog came and was marked. Then the hunter took a torch and went to the tree. On the broken top was a terrible creature. He could see its head and a part of its body. It had long teeth, enormous eyes, and huge claws. The man had never seen any animal so dreadful. As he went back to camp, one of the dogs followed him and said, "We shall be killed, but we will do what we can to save you. You must hurry to the village. Don't take a torch or a bow with you, they'll be in your way. Put on a new pair of moccasins and take a second pair. I'll lick the soles of your feet so you can run fast." The dog licked his master's feet, and then the man put on new moccasins and started for home. He had been running a good while when one of the dogs overtook him and said, "Run faster. The creature has started. It doesn't travel on the ground, but leaps from tree to tree. The only thing I can do is to get between the trees and spring at it as it leaps. When you come to water, stir it up. Make it as muddy as you can, and then drink of the water. We drink of such water. It is better for us." The man soon got thirsty. When he came to a spring, he stirred the water up and then drank what he wanted and went on. He hadn't gone far when the dog came up and said, "There is a hole in your moccasin." The man looked, and sure enough, there was a hole. "Put on new ones," said the dog. The dog licked his master's feet, and the man put on new moccasin. Then the dog went back, and the man hurried on. Soon the other dog ran up and said, "The creature is coming very fast. We are afraid it will kill you. My brother will come to you once more, but when he gets back, he will be killed." The dog disappeared. The man listened. Both dogs were barking, and then one bark ceased, and he knew the dog was coming to him. "I've come," said the dog, "to speak to you once more. When I go back, I shall attack the creature and do all I can to overpower it, but it will kill me." The dog went back, and the man heard both dogs bark and howl. He knew by the sound that they were fighting. Then only one dog howled. The other was dead. The man tried to increase his speed, but it was a dark night, and he ran against trees and brush. The barking ceased, and soon the dog was at his side. "My brother is dead," he said. "I am alone. The village isn't far away. You must scream. Someone may hear you." The man began to scream as he ran. That night there was a dance in the longhouse, and people were sitting around outside. A young man heard the cry of someone in distress, and he gave the alarm. The dog came once more to encourage his master. "Do your best," he said. "You're near the village. I will come once more, then I will pull the creature down and fight it." The man heard the dog when it got back and knew by the sound that the creature was getting near. The dog came again and said, "This is the last time you will see me. I shall attack the creature, and it will kill me. If the people hear your cries, they will come and rescue you. If not, you will be killed." The dog went back. He had only a short distance to go. The man saw torches. His cries had been heard. The dog howled in distress. Then all was silent. Holding up, when the man saw the torches, he struggled harder and harder to get to them. As the people met him, he fell. Holding up their torches, the men looked ahead and saw a terrible animal. Its forelegs were longer than its hind ones. They shot at it, but it disappeared. In one night, the man had made a journey that required 2 days. They carried him to the village, and as soon as he could talk, he told what had happened. The people decided to go to the camp in the woods and bring home the meat. Now, near the village, they found the last dog. It was torn to pieces. Farther on, they found the other dog, also torn to pieces. When they reached the camp, they saw that most of the meat had been eaten. What was left, they carried home. The animal was never seen again. The end.
That was cool. I feel bad for the dogs.
Really. And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I lost my place. I have a tendency to look up for a second or look at the camera, and then I look back and I couldn't find where I left off. But anyway, shame on me.
That's all right. It happens to the best of us, right?
Yeah.
Hey, when I edit it, eventually when I edit the thing, I usually squeeze those things together so it sounds like you never lost your place at all.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a minute that I paused, so that ain't worth it. That ain't worth it to
You'd
edit.
be surprised all the little cuts I make when I edit those shows. A little gap of 5 seconds, it just makes the story. It's like you never broke a beat. It's like
Yeah.
there that long pause or whatever, or if you gotta like cough, or if you gotta find your place again. It's amazing how I can cut that out, and then it just sounds like you just read it all the way straight through, like you're $1 million winner.
And only $100,000.
Yeah.
Hey, give me $1 and we're even. But anyway, so
That's
we got
right.
another story. We got time for it. The deserted village.
Okay, let me get this going. The deserted village. Share screen. All
Yeah, let
right.
me get my drink again.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. It's all yours.
Okay, super duper. The deserted village. A grandfather and grandson lived together. They were the only persons left of a large nation. All their relatives and friends had been killed. When the boy was old enough, his grandfather made him a bow and arrows and taught him to hunt. He killed small animals at first, but after a while he killed a deer. Each time he brought home game, his grandfather danced and rejoiced and mentioned the name of the game. The two lived happily together till the grandson was a young man. Then one day his grandfather said to him, "You are old enough to marry. I would like to have a woman here to cook. You must go south and find a wife. For an ordinary man, it is a long journey, but you will go quickly." And giving his grandson a pair of moccasins, he sent him off. About midday, the young man came to an opening in the woods. In the opening was a large village. He went from one house to another, and all were empty. Then he went to the long house, and looking in, saw on a bench the body of a young woman. The corpse was ornamented with beautiful beads. The young man thought, "I'll take some of those beads. They will be nice for my wife when I find one." He took what beads he wanted and went outside, said to himself, "I'll go home now and look for a wife some other time." He started northward as he thought and ran along swiftly. After a while, he came to a clearing and, to his surprise, found it was the same one that he had left. Looking at the village and the longhouse, he thought, "I must have made a mistake. He took bearings again and hurried toward home. Again, he came out in the village. It must be that woman brings me here because I have taken her beads. I'll give them back to her. He went to the longhouse, put the beads on the body, and again started for home. On the way, he killed a bear and skinned it. Taking some of the meat, he rolled it up in the skin, made a pack, and carried it along, running as fast as he could, hoping to reach home before night. At night, he came out in the same opening. This is strange, he thought. I'll have to spend the night in the longhouse. He kindled a fire, cooked his meat, spread out the bear skin, and sat down to eat. As he ate, he threw the bones behind him. Soon he heard crunching and gnawing. Maybe a hungry ghost does that, thought he. I'll give it some meat. He threw pieces of meat behind him and heard them eaten. After he had eaten enough, he crawled under the bear skin to sleep. Soon, something began to pull the bear skin from his feet. He sprang up, stirred the fire, and put on more wood. All was quiet, and he lay down again. After a while, when the fire had grown dim, something crawled over his body, came up to his breast. He threw his arms around the thing, wrapped it in the bear skin, and sprang to his feet. A terrible struggle began. The two wrestled from near the fire to the end of the longhouse and then down along the other side. When near the place they had started from, the gray of daylight came. That minute, what seemed to be a body dropped to the floor and lay still. The young man lashed the bear skin around it closely, left it to the floor, and cooked and ate his breakfast. He was curious to know what was in the skin, for he thought it must be something connected with the woman. Opening the skin carefully, he found only a piece of clotted blood about the size of his fist. He heated water, dissolved the blood, and with a wooden ladle he whittled out with this flint knife. He poured some of the blood into the woman's mouth. It went down her throat. Again and again he poured. At last, the woman's breast began to move. When he had given her half the blood, she breathed. When she had taken it all, she said, "I'm hungry." The young man pounded corn, made thin gruel, and fed her. Soon she was able to sit up, and in a little while she was well. She said, "People lived in this village till a short time ago. Many men from the north have wanted to marry me. When I was unwilling and refused each one of them, they changed me and drove my father and all of his people away. I was left here for dead." "Come," said the young man, "we will go and find your father." They set out together and after a while came to a village. Crow, with his large family, lived in the house at the edge of the village. When the young man told Crow the story of the longhouse and the chief's daughter, Crow said, "My chief is this girl's father. I'll tell him that his daughter is alive." Crow hurried to the chief's house and said to the chief, "Your daughter is alive." The mother screamed, "You lie! No one ever came to life after being dead more than 10 days. And taking up a club, she started to drive Crow out of the house. "Don't strike me," said the chief. "Maybe our Don't strike him, said the chief. Maybe our daughter has come to life. She has, said Crow. She is in my house now. Tell her to come here, said the chief. When the chief and his wife saw their daughter, they were happy. And as they were willing, the young man became their son-in-law. After a few days, the man said to his wife, borrow your father's bow and arrows. All young men in the village are to hunt tomorrow. I must go with them. Each man went alone, starting early. Crow met the young man and said, I'll fly high and look around and see where the deer are. Crow saw 10 deer some distance away. He came down and said, I'll fly behind those deer and drive them towards you. You can kill them. The young man waited till the deer passed. Then, when all were in line, he killed the 10 with one arrow. Crow said, the hunters never give me anything but intestines. You may have a whole deer today, said the young man. Crow flew home with the news and asked, what are our young men good for? The chief's son-in-law has killed 10 deer before sunrise. The other hunters had bad luck. At night there was a feast and a dance in the longhouse. The hunters planned to kill the young man. When in the dance he came to the middle of the longhouse, by their magic they made him sink deep into the ground and disappear. But Crow knew where he was, and when all were gone, he called upon his friend Turkey to dig up the young man. Turkey came and scratched till at last he had the dirt away, and then Crow made a rope, and together they drew the young man out of the ground. The chief decided to leave the enemies of his son-in-law and go with the good people, the friends of his son-in-law, to live in the village where the young man's grandfather lived. They went there, settled down, and lived happily. The end.
Well, that was a good one.
Yeah, there wasn't any killing of relatives or lopping off of heads. You know what I mean?
That's right. That is right. But the guy was a hero. He could kill 10 deer with one arrow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and Turkey came and scratched him out. That's
And,
interesting.
and like he says, and then she chopped off his head.
Yeah, they didn't say what happened to the other hunters, and whether or not they were going to assassinate him later on, but that's another story.
That's another story.
Yeah, well, they went there, settled down, and lived happily. So, that's cool. That's, happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
Before happily ever after was like a thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was I don't know who invented the happily ever after. Oh boy. Oh, you got a card for us tonight?
Yeah, I picked some earlier.
Oh, good deal.
And so we'll go through them here and see what we got.
Okay.
Lim just hit my roof. Oop, let me get the book. The first one up is antelope. And we haven't had antelope in a while.
No, not in a while.
And I think antelope is about stamina, but oops, there's antelope.
Ooh.
Action.
Action.
Yeah,
Dum
hang
dum
on.
dum dum
Dum,
dum
dum, dum,
dum.
dum. Yep, there you go. So I thank you all tonight for being here, and I hope you all are doing well. Oh, that pair of glasses is really smudged. Hang on. I have to wear two pairs of glasses to see this print. It's really small and narrow. It's a nasty font. And I just had my eyes checked, and so it's not me.
Yeah.
It's small print and narrow.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll be there in a second. I have to clean my other set of glasses here. Run, antelope, teach me of action and its pace. Quickly, quickly, so I may run with grace. So, antelope number 37 in the book, it was straight up. So, and I shuffled them good and did a good shuffle and shuffled them again. When time was just beginning and the tribe of man was small, Antelope saw that the two-leggeds were naked and hungry and in danger of extinction. The ancestors would soon vanish from Mother Earth if action were not taken. Antelope took action and came into the camp and calling all the two-leggeds together for counsel. Great Mystery sent me to teach you a lesson. The lesson is to do. You have no need to be fearful if you know what to do, and then you do it, Antelope said. And what shall we do? Asked the people. If you are naked and cold, you should kill me and take my coat to keep you warm. It is my gift to you. Do it. We will, said the people, but what of our hunger? We are starving. What can we do to save ourselves? If you are hungry, you should kill me and take my flesh, for it will nourish you and make you strong. It is my gift to you and a part of my evolution. It is my service. Do it. Antelope knew that humankind would survive the Ice Age if the people learned to eat meat. Before the movement of the Great Ice Mountain, fruit and vegetables had been plentiful, and the two-leggeds had no need to eat of the bodies of their fellow creatures. The clans of the second world ate antelope, taking the instinct and wisdom of the four-leggeds into their bodies. The people learned through each creature's essence how to survive. In other words, if you ate deer, you ate their essence. You felt like deer. If you ate a possum, then you felt like a possum. If you ate a goat, then you were a billy goat. They were taught never to waste or to take more than they needed. When they were in need, the two-leggeds knew how to take action. Humans learned antelope's lesson well. Because of antelope, humans took proper action. This is the important part. They took proper action and survived to this present day. Antelope taught humans to honor the gifts sent from the great mystery and to avoid indiscriminate destruction of life. This sentence is really important. Antelope taught humans to honor the gifts sent from the great mystery. There are many folks that just shrug their shoulders and like, well, what does that mean? Antelope signifies knowledgeable action. Antelope is a symbol for the antenna of your hair, which attaches you to great mystery by its long cords of light. Looking at an antelope, you become aware of your mortality and the short time span you have on this planet. With this in mind, you must act accordingly. Proper action pleases the great mystery. Antelope medicine is the knowledge of life's circle. Knowing of death, antelope can truly live. Action is the key and the essence of living. That's a good sentence. Action is the key. So always listen to what the what the antelope has to say to you. Antelope in your cards indicates a message of higher purpose. Antelope arms you with the bow of authority and forces you to act on behalf of self, family, clan, nation, and finally, Mother Earth. Antelope says, do it now. Don't wait any longer. Antelope knows the way, and so do you. Take courage and leap. Your sense of timing is perfect. When antelope is bounced into your cards, the time is now, and the power is you. The next one, I hope that antelope card resonates with somebody out there. The next one is, we've had beaver before, but this one's upside down. Oh, what's the number? 22. 22 is about building, I think. Beaver is the builder. Beaver, teach me to build my dreams, including others too. One mind, one thought, hearts as one, lessons learned from you. Beaver is the builder. Beaver is the doer. Isn't that interesting? We just came out of antelope, and what did antelope say? Do it. Beaver is the doer in the animal kingdom. Talk about linked together, eh? Beaver medicine is akin to water and earth energy and incorporates a strong sense of family and home. Ain't nothing wrong with that. If you were to look at the dams that block woodland streams, you would find several entrances and exits. In building its home, beaver always leaves itself many alternatives and escape routes. This practice is a lesson to all of us not to paint ourselves into a corner. If we eliminate our alternatives, we dam the flow of experience in our lives. If we eliminate our alternatives, so you say, well, I might be able to do that. No. I think I could do it this way. No. If I try it this way. No. So if you eliminate your alternatives, we dam the flow of experience in our lives. A doer is characterized by industriousness, and beaver knows that limitation cancels productivity. Limitation cancels productivity. Beaver is armed with very sharp teeth that are capable of felling whole trees. Imagine what those teeth could do to the limbs of a predator. To understand beaver medicine, you might take a look at the power of working and attaining a sense of achievement, working together with somebody else to achieve a goal. In building a dream, teamwork is necessary. To accomplish a goal with others involves working with the group mind. Group mind constitutes harmony. And it's the harmony of the highest order, without individual egos getting in the way. Each partner in the project honors the talents and abilities of the others and knows how to complete the piece of the puzzle that belongs to them. If beaver has appeared in your spread, it may be time to put your ideas into action. If antelope says do it, or to complete some project that has been neglected, a project being neglected. The beaver card could also be asking you to settle differences with fellow workers or friends. Weaver tells you to look for alternative solutions to life's challenges and to protect the creations which you put your love and energy into. Sometimes Beaver brings you a warning to watch your back. If this is your message, you will know it by the position in which the card falls. It was straight up, and that means that Beaver's telling us to work together and to be a doer. That's just interesting. Those two cards went right together. 42 is, can anybody guess? Number 42. Let's see where I am. 42 is bat. We haven't had bat in a while. Wow. We got two doer cards, and bat is rebirth. Sacred bat flew to me from the darkness of the cave. A womb like reflections, answers it gave. Birth, death, and rebirth, cycles of the whole, never ending, just eclipsed, the journey of the soul. Steeped in the mystery of the Mesoamerican tribal ritual is the legend of the bat, akin to the ancient Buddhist belief in reincarnation in Central America. The bat is the symbol of rebirth. The bat has for centuries been a treasured medicine of the Aztec, the Toltec, the Tolkien, and the Mayan peoples. Bat embraces the idea of a shamanistic death. The ritual death of the healer is steeped in the secrets and highly involved initiation rites. Shaman death is a symbolistic death of the initiative to the old ways of life and personal identity. The initiation that brings the right to heal and to be called shaman is necessarily preceded by a ritual death. Most of these rituals are brutally hard on the body and mind and spirit. In light of today's standards, it can be very difficult to find a person who can take the abuse that comes with it. The ritual is very similar to the night of fear practiced by many native tribes. In other words, you have to dig your own um, grave and get in it and spend the night there. So, if bat has appeared in your cards today, it symbolizes the need for a ritualistic death. Now, we had two doer cards, and now we've got bat saying we need a ritualistic death. And I think basically what that means, we have to get rid of the old stuff to make room for the new stuff. This can mean a time of letting go of old habits. See, get rid of old habits and of assuming the position in life that prepares you for rebirth. So as you get rid of old habits and things, you are reborn because now you don't have those kind of things to bring you down or hold you back. If you resist your destiny, it can be a long, drawn out, or painful death in the spiritual sense. But, the universe is always asking you to grow and become your future. I'm going to repeat that again. The universe is always asking you to grow and become your future. To do so, you must die the shaman's death and leave all those nasty things behind you. So, those are the cards for today. Not bad. Antelope is the doer, beaver's the doer, and bat's telling us to get rid of old stuff and move on. Move for the future.
That's right. That's right. Oh, yeah. Wow. Good message for tonight. Be a doer.
And I'm 5 minutes before, our 2 hour mark.
That's right. With
How
that,
about that? We made it under 2 hours.
we barely by a hair of our chinny chin chin, and another show in the bag. Anyway, I will. I tell you what. Next week, hopefully, we'll finish up. Maybe I'll do a little more on the Sioux. Finish up with that story. But people, I suggest that if you're interested in this stuff, check it out yourself. If you want that PDF that I was reading out of, let me know. I'll send it to you too. Email is in the description below. Give me a like and a thumbs up, whatever, too, because it helps the algorithm, of course. And what do you got going on this week? I see we're on the other day talking about those particles.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting thing. And, people need to shorten up. We've been covered with stuff from above, and we've all seen it. We know but those aluminum nanoparticles are literally, because they've been doing this for years, has gotten into everything. And there are a lot of scientists that are talking about this now, but it's all on the QT. Nobody in the major news or anything's talking about it. But in certain places, they put so much of this out that it's killing plants and the biodiversity of stuff. The plankton has dropped by like 90% or something, and that feeds the whales and other creatures. On my own river here that I was on the other night, where Duggar almost killed me. I could choke that dog, I swear. But with all these nanoparticles of aluminum, it's bad for us. Because these particles are so small, they get drawn up into plants. I mean, oh my God, it's everywhere. And of course, it's not our fault. But not to be a doomsdayer, but the thing is that if this is the truth, and it looks like it is the truth, because things don't grow like they used to in my own garden out back. So the answer to that is to try to grow indoors, a little greenhouse, a little something, and grow indoors, and with potting soil, and keep your fingers crossed that it will do better. But outside, if they continue with this stuff, it's only going to kill the plants. And that's just so. There's an answer: grow stuff inside. Try to build, if you're going to have a project for this year, build a greenhouse as large as you can afford.
Yep, I agree.
And it's a shame, but that's a short-term answer, but it's better than nothing,
Yeah.
Because you can actually grow plants indoors without any soil. You can use different mediums like rock wool and things like that. And, so you don't have to worry about the contamination of the soil. And also you can, use lights to augment whatever the sun doesn't do for your plants. So, but anyway, there is an answer. There are solutions, but folks gonna have to get off their duff and do it.
That's true. That is true. You got to do something.
Yep. But see, that's the answer. See, Antelope says, a doer, and same as Beaver tonight. So, you asked me a question about that. So we need, these are things that we need to do, not just say, well, I don't know what, and we're all going to die. Well, at some point, yeah, but, you could do a lot better. And if you grow your own stuff, even a little bit, you have the enjoyment of, I just picked some fruit. I just pulled squash off my plant and had fresh squash tonight. Not fresh squash from the store, but there's that thing about, what I mean, Robert? When you get stuff out of your garden, ain't it just the best?
It is. It is. It tastes so much different than the store-bought stuff.
Absolutely.
It really does.
I want to
Well,
thank you all for listening and bless you all. And, we continue to pray that each and every day, that each and every one of you will continue to learn how to accept and receive the knowledge, the healing, and the wisdom from the universe.
that's right. That is right. I agree. I'm on board with that. And you got a show tonight?
Yeah, I think for a little bit. Yeah, I'm kind of cranked up, so I'll go get some coffee and and take a
Great.
short break, and then yep.
Yeah. And I'll be back this week. I got a bunch of shorts coming out, so people check that out. Remember, Saturday night I got Zigzagzilla coming on. We're going to be talking about DMT. So it's going to be an interesting show. And with that, remember, go out and be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.
Cheers.